Hello and welcome to Sugar, Silk and Stretch, a unique boxing podcast brought to you exclusively by Ace Podcast Nation. My name is Ben Doughty,
My name is Michael Silk Olajide.
and we're delighted to be joined this week by Texas boxing legend and promoter, manager, sports promoter in general, Lester Bedford. Thank you for gracing us with your presence, sir. How you doing?
Oh, doing very well. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. My first opportunity to visit you guys. I saw Michael fight many times over the years, and great fighter, and I used to enjoy following his career. And I'm one of those guys that you didn't know, Michael. I worked on just about every major fighter's career, and at some point during the career, but I didn't have the opportunity to work with yours. But I sure followed you well.
Oh man, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for saying. I didn't get up to the levels that some of the guys that you worked with that won the world title and all the rest of that. But maybe there'll be another go around. Then the next time around, maybe they'll get a chance for us to work together. That'd be great.
So, Lester, looking at your start of your
that'd be great.
Sorry, I'm going to allow slightly for the delay that we seem to have between London, New York, and Plano, Texas. But Lester, looking at the start of your illustrious journey in boxing, one thing I didn't realize until today, quite honestly, was that you were involved with a fighter called James Bubba Bashimi, who went on to fight the great Alexis Arguello. And that was one of your first major league fights. What interested me, Lester, was you described him as one of the greatest amateur fighters in the history of the USA, which was something I wasn't particularly aware of, but I've checked out his amateur record. So could you pick the story up for me?
Yeah, my apologies.
Oh no!
It looks like he's frozen. Yeah,
it looks like he's frozen. You may have to come out and come back in.
Possibly so.
Yeah. Man, that's a drag. But maybe this will give us a chance to have a little bit of a discussion between you and I. To take a second to discuss something we won't be able to discuss at the end of the show.
Maybe so, but Lester, can you hear me? It feels like we've got a bit of a delay here.
Well, I think.
Oh man, my apologies.
I'm wondering if you should try logging out and coming back in again.
Technical difficulty here.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you log out and come back in again, we might get.
Let me do that. I'll do that, and
yeah, we may get a better shot the second time.
Okay, let's try that. Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be right back.
All right.
Thank you. Cheers, Lester. I hope this works out because he's going to be a great guest as long as we're not plagued with this issue.
Yeah.
Was there something else you wanted to discuss, Mr. Silk, while we're waiting for?
Well, yeah, certainly. I thought it was, I wanted to preface everything with saying first, like God pays debts in no uncertain terms. And we have this, our little betting try.
Here we go.
Well, I think it's very important. We have to every week we have to continue to reestablish.
Here's what you're going to say. You're going to tell me the reason why me and Gary both lost was karma because we wouldn't tell you. We were being all conspiratorial and not telling you who we picked. And you're like, and then curse the pair of us. Do you want me to tell you something that will not displease you?
Okay.
It's got to be based on percentage now because Gary is like 15-6 and you're like 14-5 or something like that. But when I added up percentage-wise last night, you are now in the lead because it has to be done on that basis. You have 70. Here comes Lester. We try again.
Okay.
How's the connection this time?
Oh, much better. Thank you.
All right.
Fantastic. Yes. So Lester, we were talking about James Bubba Bashimi, your first major league fighter. Will you pick up the story for me?
Oh yeah, sure. Bubba had fought in the 1972 Olympics and was one of my favorite fighters to watch. In fact, I watched him fight in those 72 Olympic trials in Fort Worth, Texas, and I was a huge Golden Gloves fan. And Bubba was a spectacular talent with a lot of hand speed, but he looked more like an accountant than he did a fighter. You would never know if he walked into a 7-Eleven that he was a fighter, right? But anyway, so Bubba had fought 13 professional fights, and he lost one, and he decided to quit and go back to school. And his manager had died, but anyway, along that time, 4 years later, he gets his degree from Lamar University. Then he decides to make a comeback, and he was about 28 years old, I guess, at the time, and just a coincidence. The first boxing event that I promoted, I was 25 years old, and I wanted to be a boxing promoter. I had covered boxing for the major paper in Fort Worth, and I had fought as a little young kid. So, but my idol, one of my idols, and I wanted him to fight on the card. I didn't even know if he was still fighting. Was Bubba Buscemi. Well, that started a long relationship right there. The first boxing event I did, he fought on it. 2 years later, we had put him in 6 fights, and it culminated in him fighting for the world championship in Beaumont, Texas, against, Michael, you'll love this, Alexis Arguello. That was a tough hill to climb. That was a tough hill to climb back then, but it was an epic. Yeah, it was an epic event, and Bubba was a spectacular fighter. And, so that was a great way to start my career. I was involved with an outstanding fighter, and had that experience of promoting my first world championship fight when I was 26 years old.
That's amazing.
And yet, you say you describe it, Lester, as the start of your career, and yet less than a year later, circa 1983, you already wanted to leave because you said Ring Magazine named you as a power to be, and you suddenly thought, do I actually want this for myself? The craziness and lack of structure in boxing bothered you. You loved baseball foremost, and you actually wanted to get out of the wild west of boxing at one point. Is that true?
Oh, well, that is true. And actually, as much as I loved it, and as much early success I had, and like you said, in 1983 Ring Magazine, when it was really the Bible of boxing, that was your whole source of boxing knowledge if you were a boxing fan. Named me Boxing's Power to Be, and I'd already started working with some of the major promoters, Top Rank, and with main events, and really took Texas from a sleepy boxing state with very little activity. All of a sudden, we had Fort Worth built up, and we had Corpus Christi, Texas, and we built up El Paso, Texas, and Fort Worth. Donald Curry, Gene Hatcher, Steve Cruz, Troy Dorsey. We built all those champions. I started the careers of all those guys. Of course, Don Curry was with Aram, but I was helping promote the local events for Aram in Fort Worth. But and then in Corpus Christi, we started the careers of Roberto Elizondo, Lupe Suarez, Frankie Panchito Warren, Jesse Benavidez. So it was quite a start as a promoter to be involved with those fighters and kickstart them and getting Texas going as a boxing community, and a lot of that led down the road to the status of boxing in Texas now, which is the greatest boxing state in the country, most likely. I don't know anybody has more major events than Texas now, and I was fortunate to have worked on in some capacity in those events, probably 95% of them, something like that. But I wanted to be boxing as a promoter. I didn't like being a promoter. Half the people hated me. I felt like Donald Trump or something. Half the world hates you, and half the world likes you and loves you. That's not a knock on Donald Trump. I'm just saying that.
It's a thankless task.
I feel like that everybody blamed me for every little thing. If a fighter got beat, it was because I put them in too tough, and sometimes I didn't even know who the hell they were fighting the day of the fight. And and I just had a lot of different episodes. It was hard I realized it was almost impossible to compete with people like Aram and main events and Don King, people like that. I didn't want that challenge. I wanted to step back, and I had someone offer me an opportunity to go into representing baseball players, which me having been a college baseball player, I really wanted to go back and go that route. So that's how I got out of boxing, and I just chose to back off of it. After the Buscemi fight and a few fights later, Actually, I think the last boxing event I may have done was Tony Ayala fighting in San Antonio against Robbie Epps, and he knocked out Robbie Epps, and he stood over and spit on him.
Freeman Coliseum, right?
That was
Freeman Coliseum.
As a promoter. That was the last events I did as a. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was about. I probably instigated some of that when I call it remember the Alamo, and I scratched out Alamo and put Ayala's, remember the Ayalas, because Robbie Epps had fought for as an amateur with Tony Ayala Sr. and his family just moved away, so he was no longer in the gym there. But we treated it like he left the Ayalas, he betrayed the family, and now Tony was going to get and it was a big fight. It was a big fight on NBC. It was actually Ayala's last fight before he went to prison.
I actually remember when Tony Ayala won that fight, and they stopped it early. And Robbie Epps said, "I get buzz like that getting into the ring. I can't see why they stopped that fight." I distinctly remember that.
Do you know? All right, let's talk about Ayala, Lester, because
he wouldn't be alive today.
let's talk
had they not stopped
Ayala,
that fight, he might not be alive today.
Yeah, that was that would have been a tough win for him. That's for sure.
Since you mentioned him, Lester, you're probably aware that I wrote. Sorry, we're getting this delay, which is making. So, is it okay? Am I clear? So, Lester, you're probably aware that I wrote so far the only. You're probably aware that I wrote the only biography of Tony Ayala Jr. so far, and I did speak to you when I was with Mike Ayala in Texas at the tail end of 2022, and I totally understood that. You would have been an invaluable source and contributor to the book, but I understood it. You're working on your own literary thing about your own amazing career, and I understood you needed to play it close to the chest because you didn't want to give it away to somebody else. But I do regret that we weren't able to talk about Ayala because I know that you saw a lot of the things that almost nobody else saw who's still alive in the fascinating dysfunctional career. So. I do hope your book comes to fruition because I'm sure there'll be a lot of fascinating stuff in it about the Ayala because he was a huge star in San Antonio at the time, right?
Oh yes, it's hard to explain. He was on the verge of fighting. He was briefly, for those who don't know, he ended up going to prison for 16 years for raping a school teacher. And that rape occurred while he was literally training in New Jersey to fight Davey Moore for the world championship. And Ben, I know you wrote a spectacular book, and I have a lot of people, friends of mine, that comment on it. And I still want to take time and read it, and because I think it's important to read it. And
I'm going to send you this copy, okay? I'm going to send you this copy.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Oh, it's a fascinating story, and I recommend people read your book. And because I know you did a lot of deep dive into it, and but Ayala went to prison for 16 years for the rape, and then he came out of prison, and I happened to be the guy that guaranteed him not me, but I had investors involved, guaranteed him $1 million for 4 fights coming out of prison. Aaron King, and nobody wanted to touch him because the having that rape attacks was. But I literally went to meet with him in the prison. I felt like he was, he expressed remorse to me, and he didn't try to deny the charges or anything like that. And but he just wanted to come back and fight. He had been in prison 19 years, and he was still only 35 years old. And so I literally made a trip up there, and I knew the family well. I knew Mike well. I had worked on several of Mike's fights along the way, and also. Sam Ayala worked on some of his fights, and his younger brother Paulie a couple of fights. The father was a good friend, and the father actually came to me and said, "Hey, look, Tony's getting ready to get out. What do you think? You have any ideas?" I said, "Yeah, I got some ideas. But let me go up there and talk to him." I went there and talked to him. But anyway, so when he got out of prison, I actually promoted that first event. I was there when he walked out of prison too, and it's quite a scene. The helicopters flying over the top and wanting to capture the moment. The ESPN was there. HBO had a helicopter there. It was the local news stations all over the East Coast and San Antonio. I mean, it was it was quite a spectacular story, him coming out, but then him coming out and trying to fight again. Michael, you can only imagine not having fought in 19 years and didn't have to come out 35 years old. But anyway, so we orchestrated this comeback, and it was quite a ride, and there was a lot of intrigue there in the whole thing. But the amazing thing was that he could still fight a lot. I'm telling you, he could fight a lot, and it was really there was a lot of intrigue and a lot of funny things that when I do finish the book, I'm like 4 chapters into a book. It's 23 chapters. So, but one of the chapters is going to be about Tony Ayala, not the entire book, but it's certainly worth a chapter in my book, and it's really worth it. The truth is, it's worth a full book like yours. I mean, I think it was smart of you to go the whole route, but hey, it's a movie
waiting to happen, Lester. It's a movie waiting to happen, or doc.
It's a movie. Exactly. And in fact, I was involved in a documentary, and we were supposed to. I had a producer out of California. We were working on a documentary with Tony, and 2 weeks before he died, we were supposed to. The day he died, 2 weeks later, we were supposed to meet with him and get a long, extensive interview, sit down interview. And so when he passed away, and his father had already passed away too. We ran out of people. And Lou Duva had died. We ran out of people that was relevant to talk to. So it's plus it's a real dark story, and it's hard. It's hard to get people excited about it. I don't think it's a movie. I don't think it's a movie because it's too dark. It's not. It had a chance to be have a lot of redemptive value, but he came within one fight of fighting for the world middleweight championship. When he fought Roy Boy Campos, he wins that fight. We had a fight with him with the world champion from France for $1 million, and that fight right there would have filled up the Alamo Dome. I'm telling you,
that was Bodiani, right? Laurent Bodiani.
Yes, yeah. But we were pretty convinced we had to fight, and we had HBO talking to taking the fight because it was a dramatic story. I mean, it was what a spectacular title. I mean, book you chose to write, and I wished along the way I had stopped and just written that book, but I had other things that happened along my career with Oscar De La Hoya, with the different my different involvement. I thought it was better for me just to do a memoir book about, and I've got multiple things to talk about, and I don't think people have the stomach for me to write 3 or 4 books or 5 books. So I'm gonna put it all in one, do it as a memoir, and and after I left as a promoter in 1984, I left to work with this law firm in Dallas representing Major League Baseball players, and then the way I got back into boxing was Dan Duva called me and was begging me to come back and be the site coordinator for all the fights for the '84 Olympians. Michael, you know all these guys: Evander Holyfield, Parnell Whitaker, Mark Breland, and Tyrell Biggs. Like so the way I got back into boxing was that Dan Duva came to me and offered me a deal. I said no at first. They called me 2 weeks later. He offered me twice as much money as I was making working for the lawyers, and it was working, as a site coordinator for all the fights on ABC Sports, and I ended up working on 16 Evander Holyfield fights, 14 Parnell Whitaker, and all total between all those fighters probably 50, 60 fights, something like that. And so I was involved in so that obviously be one of my chapters in my book, was the experience I had working with all those guys and those champions. And but the towards the thing that really intrigued me always was the Tony Ayala story. That was a fascinating story, and I recommend anybody to read your book, because you had some great insight with Mike Ayala and the people you did interviews with. So it's.
Has boxing changed from the 80s? Do you feel it's changed significantly, and if so, how?
Was who changed?
has boxing itself. Boxing is
Yeah, it changed a lot, Michael, and I'll tell you why. And in some cases for the better, some cases for the worse. I don't know about you, but what would your career be if there was no HBO? You know, I think it's the worst thing that happened to boxing in the United States was that we lost HBO, and that was so now. You know, now everything's on secondary networks and such, and it doesn't have the same feel. And when I came up in boxing, we had every weekend there were fights on CBS, NBC, ABC. You know, of course, I did all those fights on ABC, Wide World of Sports, maybe 30, 40 boxing events. I probably worked on 70, 80 HBO boxing events where I went in, I literally ran the live gate events. The promoters just show up with the fighters and everything, and I do all the work. And so that's really where I wanted to go in my career. I wanted to work at the top of the game, and I wanted to do something special in different places and do things that were good for boxing. And, you know, it's shit. I want to make money too, brother. You know, I'm like everybody else. You can't make money at the bottom. So, you know, so that I used that experience from 84 to about 87 with all those Olympians. Well, actually, it went all the way up to the 90s because I worked on several of those fights after that. But, you know, that was kind of the real springboard for me was working with those Olympians and getting the credibility with all the promoters. And so basically, if somebody did a fight, you know, I brought a lot of promoters, encouraged a lot of them to come to Texas, and we did a lot of great things in Texas, including, you know, I basically put the Dallas Cowboys into boxing. They had no interest in being involved in boxing, and I had some friends that were close to Jerry Jones, and we sat and talked to him, and we talked to the people around him, and was able to get Manny Pacquiao to Cowboy Stadium, and then after that, Canelo twice, Manny twice, Canelo twice, Errol Spence, and now you got Mike Tyson fighting there at 58 years old or something.
Oh yeah,
it's all crazy. But boxing, to answer your question, Michael, it's
no, it really does. Thank you so much.
There was more exposure for the fighters at the time. Yeah, and not only that, I don't know if you know, but you know the way local promotions and stuff work around Texas and different things. You got all these promoters and they have all these they do all this stuff on social media and all that kind of stuff, and then they put on a fight card and they expect the damn fighters to pay for themselves to fight on the card.
And in London too, and in Britain too.
Oh yeah, they call them buy-ons. And I manage some fighters. I manage 3 fighters right now, and one of my fighters, I desperately needed to fight for him, and I had to. Not only did I have to pay a guy to put him on the card, they wanted me to do a $1,000 buy-on fee. This is down in San Antonio, and I had to bring him cash for the purses of both fighters, plus the hotel, and plus an extra $1,000 just because he's a dick. You know what I'm saying? I mean.
No, you're so right. It's completely unfair.
Yeah. The guy was, and when I handed him the money, I was so angry about the buy-on fee. One thing to pay for the fight, but to pay an extra $1,000 above what the cost was irritating to me. I said, you know what? I'm just going to let you guys know. I said, you may run me out of the building here. He wasn't going to because we had the best fight on the card with the undefeated 10-0 kid. I said, but you know what? I spent 35 years building up San Antonio so you could do what you're doing right now. I said, it's an insult to me. It's an insult to me that you're sitting here making me pay an extra damn $1,000. And I said, you know, this will be the last time I do it. I said, I'm going to do this, but you know, it's I won't forget. I can help people or I can hurt people. I don't try to hurt people though, but I could help them. I could help them in many ways, but I have no interest in
goodwill.
Yeah.
It was completely unfair to professional fighters because promoters get paid to promote, fighters get paid to fight, and a fighter shouldn't have to bring his pay with him. He's supposed to get, you know what I mean?
And you know, guys, in England, you have in England at the small hall level, if you don't have a TV promoter, you expect to sell at least 100 tickets, which is about £3,500 worth. And if you don't sell that, then you don't get on. If you do, then you get a guy, because you have to pay for him basically. You're basically paying the guy to lose to you at that prelim level. You understand?
And that's
Yeah,
why
yeah.
the best part of boxing is so unfair and so non-competitive at that rate.
Yes.
Yeah, you get a lot of bad matches on cards like that too. Just happened to be my fighter was 10-0 fighting a 12-2 guy because I'm interested in developing him as a fighter. I want him to fight decent fighters. I was also involved in the careers of Jesse James Leha. I was his manager 17 years. I was a consultant the whole career for Paulie Ayala, and it actually represented Evander for a while. I had some other fighters along the way, but it's important. It's important that you put guys in there with real fighters because it's kind of like I equate everything to baseball guys because I'm a baseball guy and I still go out and play baseball. I'm 40 and over, 50 and over, 60 and over.
Yeah.
So I equate everything to baseball, but it's like it's like a guy goes, he faces 75-mile-an-hour fastball, 75-mile-an-hour fastball. Then he sees 80 mile an hour, and all of a sudden he sees 95 or 100. In other words,
he's not ready for it.
They're fighting all these bullshit prelim fighters, and they got to step in with Michael Lajide. No, thank you. You want to never be world champion. Develop a fighter like that. You can't develop, make something special when a guy fights a bunch of bullshit fighters. Jesse James Leha, by the time he finally got to fight Azuma Nelson, imagine your first world title fight. Your only choice is you got to fight. You got to fight Azuma Nelson when he hadn't lost in 13 years. He was number 5 pound for pound fighter in the world. That was Jesse James Leha. But you know what? They told me I was a fool. Lou Dumas said in the San Antonio paper that Lester Bedford was going to ruin Jesse James Leha's career, thinking he can hang this guy. He'll be knocked out in 4 or 5 rounds. And I said, okay, all right, whatever you guys think. I'd say whatever you think, but you know what? My guy has beaten fighters as good as him. Okay, and that's the way I felt at the time. He had been in tough. I mean, he'd beaten like 6 world-rated contenders, 3 world champions, 2 Olympians. I mean, he'd been in the underdog like 6 or 7 fights, and there's nothing. What was this? I was sitting there watching tape. What's this guy going to bring that my guy hasn't seen? And so I remember that. I remember. In developing a fighter, now, if you're going to be involved in managing a fighter, you really want to do them justice. Don't put them in there with a bunch of bullshit fighters. Put them in there with some real fighters. You want to pick guys that he can gain experience with and that he can become a better fighter. You don't want to get his ass beat for sure, but sometimes you have to take
there's an art to it.
You have to take a little bit of that risk along the way because if you're going to step in the ring with Michael Lajide, you better have fought some real fighters along the way, or you're getting ready to see a 95-mile-an-hour fastball.
I like the way Silk is our reference point for excellence, and he's like a high bar. That's cool. I'm down with it. I'm down with it.
That's his. He wants to change the subject. That's one of his. But let me ask you something. You were a Texas Rangers guy?
Oh yeah, big Texas Rangers fan. I mean, in fact, I came very close just recently. That fight between Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney, I had it set on behalf of Golden Boy. I had it set to be at the Texas Rangers ballpark at Globe Life Field, and it would have been great, incredible marketing partners. I still think that they made a mistake not putting it there, and but. I had everything set, and they didn't want to spend a little bit extra money at the cost. Decided to put in the Bronx, but I think it cost them several $1 million by not putting it there. And but I grew up a Texas Rangers fan. Listen to this, Michael. When I was the first year of the Texas Rangers was 1972, right? Okay. I was an usher and a ticket taker in the ballpark the first night the Texas Rangers played in 1972.
That's amazing.
I was the worst usher in the history of the world. I sat there and watched the game. I was there following the players, watching the game because I was. My dad was a former professional baseball player, and so, I grew up playing, and I played, and I eventually played college baseball and a little bit of professional baseball. But anyway, so I'm a baseball guy, and I grew up a Rangers fan, and I worked there 2 years as an usher ticket taker, and one summer I worked for a couple months on the ground crew. I used to keep the bullpens and the home plates, the dirt.
Yeah. So you must know Roland Betts.
Oh yeah.
Great guy. I know him well from Chelsea Piers.
Wait, who are you talking about?
Roland Betts.
Oh
Roland
yeah.
Betts.
Oh yes. I know him.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know him.
we
I don't know him personally. I just know of him, and you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one of our fans wrote in. He actually asked, and speaking of big owners down there in Texas, how did Josephine Abercrombie? Do you have any
Good,
interesting
well remembered.
stories
I knew Josephine very well.
there?
And I'll tell you, at the time, I was, trying to do my own thing in boxing and working with other promoters as well. And a lot of people thought that I should beware of Josephine Abercrombie. No, that wasn't like that at all. When I see somebody come along that wants to do great things for boxing, she's genuinely had the interest of the fighters, and overcaught them a little bit too much in some cases. Gave them a little bit too much too fast, maybe.
Yeah.
But you know what though? She loved boxing, and the story about her loving boxing came from her father. Her father used to set ringside at boxing events in the 30s and 40s in Houston. And the promoter for those fights was a guy named Hugh Bimbo. And Hugh Bimbo was my big mentor, who was a manager for Bubba Bashimi. And he also was a manager for Big Cat Cleveland Williams when he fought Muhammad Ali at the Astrodome, which was the first epic event ever in Texas. And anyway, so that's one of my chapters in my book is about one of them about Hugh Bimbo. And Josephine Abercrombie, her love for boxing came from going setting ringside at Hugh Bimbo's fights when he was a promoter with her father. And but Josephine, she had a ranch that a training camp the fighters could go to, and she supported them financially. And her and Bob Spagnola is still a good friend of mine, and Bob's done a great job. Yeah, he's a guy, a manager of a lot of champions, should be considered for the Boxing Hall of Fame, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Bob is
good. Yeah, it's a close one there. Now, the only thing that in that whole relationship that I didn't like between Bob and I was that I had my guy Sergio Reyes, a '92 Olympian. I don't know if you knew Sergio, but Sergio beat the hell out of Orlando Canizales in Laredo, Texas, and they stole the decision from us. I mean, they stole it. Gil Clancy, and you guys remember Gil Clancy as a great commentator and maybe the most knowledgeable guy in boxing at the time.
Fantastic analyst.
He had Sergio Reyes win the fight 9 rounds to 3, and they gave the fight. They gave the fight to Orlando, and Orlando's my friend too, and I love both him and Bob. But I almost got my ass beat in the middle of the ring because I picked Sergio up, and Jesse Reed came over and pushed me real hard. Now Jesse thinks he was going to beat my ass, okay? But he doesn't know that I was forced to deal with when I was 6 to 12 years old boxing.
Have you told Orlando in recent years that he lost that fight? Have you told him?
No, but you know what? They know. Believe me. Everybody in the ballpark knew Orlando was dejected after the fight. He was going. What happened was he was going for his 18th win, consecutive win to break the bantamweight record. There's no way the IBF is going to let him get away. Cedric Kushner was a promoter, and I had one of the judges before he died, like 3 or 4 years before he died, told me he thought the other 2 guys were on the cake. That's what he thought. That's what he thought. And of course, the IBF, the president of the IBF went to jail not too long ago. Yeah, it looked very suspicious. The whole thing was incredibly suspicious. And poor Sergio Reyes never won the world title. He won that fight that day, and they took it away from him. And it breaks my heart for him. Can you imagine, Michael, knowing you beat the hell out of somebody and you're going to be world champion for the rest of your life? Yeah. I mean, because, to be able to walk around and not just be Michael Elijah Day, you're Michael Elijah Day world champion, and that's always attached to your name.
Absolutely.
And Sergio denied that. Now, he was an Olympian. He was a captain of the '92 Olympic team, but he was only 10-0. That's another one they thought I was an idiot for putting him in the wicked, nasty Orlando Canizales. They're going to beat his ass. And I had people question me on that one, too. I said, wait a second. I know my guy. And when you know your guy, and your guy's fought some decent fighters along the way, I knew we had a real chance in the fight, and boy, he took it to him. Oh my God, Sergio just beat his ass that day, and they'll never, they'll probably never admit it or anything. They'll act like it was no big deal at the time, but there was a lot of people that were upset about it. It was one of, I think Ring Magazine eventually had one of the worst decisions of the year or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Do you think you have to inherently be extremely competitive or even evil to make it to the top in boxing as a manager, promoter, any of those things, even as a fighter? Do you think you have to have this like cutthroat mentality?
Sociopathic.
Well, here's the thing. First of all, you can't replace talent. If the guy can't fight, he's not going to get there. I mean, you can know a guy 17, 18, and 0. You've seen it. Both of you see it. You see guys, and the first time they get into a real fight, they're going to get the butt kicked. And
yes.
So, number one, the guy's got to have talent. And number two, if they don't have the chin, I don't care what kind of talent they got. They can't. They're not going to get there. Because the first time they face a guy that can punch a little bit, they're going to get knocked out. And I've seen several fighters that could do everything, but they couldn't take a punch. And I had a middleweight named Jake Strickland in Fort Worth. He could make $50 million if he could have taken a punch. But
could have held a shot.
Every time he get clipped on the chin, he'd get hurt. And so that first, and as you know, Michael, guys who make it to the top, guys like you, when it gets really, really rough, you can fight. You're willing to fight, and that's the separator. If the guy has a chin, he has a talent, and then he has the will to fight when it's really, really rough, rather than and find ways to turn it around, because you're not always going to just box out cute guys and stuff like that. At some point, you're going to be in a war, and you got to be able to get to the war, right, Michael?
You're 100% on point.
And that's the mental makeup of a champion is that it's the guys who are willing to fight through pain and can get to the end of the fight and turn things around. And it's hard to get to the top as a fighter. And as a manager, you've got to do a good job with the fighter, because mismatched fighters, there's a lot of guys who had the talent and all that we just talked about that don't get to the top because they were poorly managed or they had problems themselves. I had four fighters that ended up in jail. One of my chapters in my book is Never Fall in Love with a Fighter. And
Teddy Brenner told you that, right?
What's that? Yeah, Teddy Brenner. Teddy Brenner, the famous matchmaker for Top Rank for many years in Madison Square Garden, told me I had a young fighter named Danny Trevino, was a terrific middleweight prospect, beautiful fighter. He was Oscar De La Hoya and Sugar Ray Leonard all wrapped into one, and he was like about 5-0 or something like that. He blasted some pretty good fighter in Atlantic City. And I turned to Teddy and said, "Teddy, what do you think?" He said, he turned and looked at me like this. He said, "Lester, don't ever," he pointed his finger at me and said, "Don't ever fall in love with a fighter." And I said, "What?" I said, "I'm not going to fall in love with a fighter. What are you talking about?" He goes, "Here's what's going to happen." He said, they're either going to disappoint you. They're not going to be the fighter you hope to be, or they're going to fuck you over. He said, you get them to the top. If somebody offers them a little bit more, or they think that they're like just had a bad day with you that day, you could be out the door in a heartbeat. So he told me never fall in love with it, but and he was so right. Danny Trevino didn't make it. Jesse James Leha, who was just like a throw-in fighter that I represented, Jesse James Leha made it because he didn't have the struggles in his life. He didn't gloat in his own glory. He didn't go out and party till 3 o'clock in the morning. I used to try to tell Danny Trevino, who was a hardcore partier, he and Sergio both. I said, guys, you can do the same things with these girls at 11 o'clock as you do it at 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, it's all the same. I mean, you got to talk them out. You got to talk them out of the club earlier or something. I said, you can't stay up at 4 o'clock in the morning and then go to it and expect to, Anyway, so but yeah, that's one of the hardest things for fighters is that, and by the way, in my book, what I will say about falling in love with fighters, well, despite them going to prison and everything else, we're still friends today. I went to see all of them in prison. I had 4 guys that went to prison, and Danny Trevino, Sergio Reyes, let me see, Golden Johnson. I don't know if you remember Golden.
I remember.
Anyway, so I went and saw these guys in prison, and they're some of my best friends now. And I fell in love with them anyway. You know, it's just, despite
the advice.
But you can line up Michael, as you know, you can line up 100 good fighters. I mean, exceptional fighters that look like they might have a career. If you can pull 3 or 4 out of there that are going to make it at the level that you fought at, it's going to be a shock because there's so many things that can go wrong. I had a young prospect named Tristan Calcruth, who in a fight he was going along in his 10th pro fight, and he was under. He was 9-0. He was 9-0, and he goes in there in the 3rd round. His shoulder comes out of the socket.
Yeah.
He tore his labrum. He tore his labrum. He couldn't go right in after the 1st round. In the 1st round, he tore his labrum, and he had so much pain. He wouldn't throw it. And then in the 3rd round, he threw it, and it literally came out of the socket. So he gets a loss because of that.
Yeah.
You know, and but he now bounced back and he had surgery on the shoulder. In fact, the Texas Rangers doctor is the one who did the shoulder surgery, who's a big time specialist. Of course, I took him to a boxing. No, I didn't take him to a boxing doctor. I took him to a baseball doctor because they know how to the shoulders. So, but you know, he had a big setback in his career, and that happens to so many fighters. They had something unexpected.
Yeah.
It derails him. I think he fights for gold. I think he's going to be a great prospect. But
and then bad habits kind of like can seep in. Like anytime you get a little opening in the schedule like that, when bad things happen or unfortunate things happen, a lot of fighters, it's very hard for them to keep that frame of mind that they were going when they're actually active. Once they become still, then bad things start happening. Bad habits, you know what I mean? Whatever it is, temptations, all the things that you put to the side when you're fighting and going somewhere, all of a sudden they really flourish. They come to the forefront, and you have to be really extremely disciplined about that. I was going to ask you if you were a fighter and you were negotiating with a promoter, what would be the most important thing the fighter should do? If I
were a fighter, I would never negotiate with a promoter because, you know, it's that's the way it is in NFL football, Major League Baseball, and you know, and for a fighter to go and try and negotiate with a promoter is ridiculous. Because
I'm sorry, I didn't mean that literally. I meant like a fighter's manager. What would he do? What would you want to negotiate for your fighter that isn't really necessarily known today? Like, for instance, when my younger brother was coming up, I'll use this as a quick example, and he was dealing with a promoter, somebody that wanted to manage him and promote him, and I said, listen, one of the best things that you can do, I think, is when you sign this contract with them, get some of the rights of your fights. That's it. That's what you want to do because.
Here's what I recommend. Number one, never get a manager that is in bed with the promoter, and that happens a lot. Yeah. You get a lot of that manager really works for the promoter. He's submissive to the promoter, and that happens in boxing. You couldn't get a fighter signed with Don King back in the day unless
Carl
was
would manage him.
Carl, yeah. In fact, Don King tried to steal Jesse James Lehoff from me and put him in Carl's hands one night, 2 nights before he fought for the world title in Vegas, where he beat Azuma for the world title. Yeah. They had Jesse James Lehoff at Don King's house trying to talk him into signing a promotional deal with Carl King. And, you know, and thank God I had a great relationship with James, and James did not pay me. So never as a fighter, let yourself have a manager that you know is submissive to that promoter. As you know, Terry Norris won a $7 million settlement against King because his manager was in bed with Don King. And,
do you know what? I remember once when Aram took care of Norris afterwards, he said the contract between Norris and King, he said, was the most unconscionable document I've ever seen in my life. He said it literally made Terry his slave forever.
oh yeah, one time we were at you remember the show Revenge of the Rematches where Chavez fought Frankie Randall, Jesse James Leha fought on the card,
Nelson, Azuma.
Yeah, and then Terry Norris fought on the card. And,
against the guy been disqualified against, maybe.
Was Simon Brown he fought? I can't remember.
Okay, it might be Simon Brown.
Yeah, it might be Simon Brown. Okay, anyway, we were at the press conference there, and I remember Terry Norris's manager going up at the podium. He started kissing Don King's ass, talking about what a wonderful man Don King was and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I'm sitting there with the knowledge in my head, knowing that Jesse James Leha was making $400,000 for the fight, and Terry Norris was getting $150,000. And I'm like, what? But Terry Norris at the time was a much more noted fighter and had several defenses, and so I knew. Of course, I wasn't going to go up there and say anything. I don't know exactly what Terry Norris was getting that day, but I just know that. I'm sorry, my apology. Jesse James Leha was getting $330,000, which was a lot for a challenger. A lot. Yeah. But anyway, so when he went up there to talk, he was kissing Don King's ass. I turned to James Leha and I said, you know what that tells me right there? He works for Don King. I said, they got some shit going on in the background that you don't even know. And sure enough, it went down later on that in fact they were basically in bed together, and that's how it happened. But dealing with a promoter, you got to have an experienced agent, a manager that knows how to talk to them, because you can be an idiot. You can talk to a promoter and you can be an idiot. You can be the manager and you can be an idiot because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You don't know what the revenues are you're dealing with. You have to know what the revenues are. First of all, it's all about the opponent. It's about the opportunity. What if I lose? What's the upside? What's the downside?
Yeah. What are the economics of it? Absolutely.
Yeah. And how does it impact your future if you lose? You get your ass knocked out. What happens? Your career might be over. So a manager may be able to get you an extra $300 for a prelim fight or $1,000. But boy, what the representation you always want as a, I don't like to stumble over pennies to get the dollars. When a fighter's young in his career, I'm not going to argue over whether we get, $1,500 for a fight or $1,700 for a fight or something like that. I want to get that win. I want to stack wins, and I want a promoter that's going to help me stack wins for my fighter and so put them in the right kind of fights. And I like, I think that for the most part, a lot of people think of promoters are crooked guys. Well, I worked for all of them. I managed and market fights for every major promoter in the United States over the last 42 years. So I know all of them. And so I know, so I have the experience to talk to them, and they know they can't bullshit me and I can't bullshit them. And, but I like to, but one thing they're not going to do, and I don't care who the manager is representing the fighter, if you're not talking sense, you're not going to come to an agreement. You're not going to win for sure, because
so much boxing is about it's really knowing your value, right? And once you understand your value, you know where you won't go lower than, and you know what's good. And it's so really rather simple, because boxing is such a primitive interaction. But whether it's on the money scale or whether it's on the fighting scale, it's still very, very much primitive. It's about what you're worth and what you're able to do when it comes down to it for the fighter. And so that's easy enough to understand, but it's never really explained to the fighters. Sorry, go ahead.
Michael, what you're kind of hitting on is that boxing is not a real business. Okay. I tell everybody it's the best and the worst of free enterprise.
Yes.
Okay? It's the best it's in free enterprise because you can do it. You can do it. Yeah. I can do it. Anybody. If I want to be a manager, I can be a manager my mother could be a manager tomorrow. My cousin could be a promoter tomorrow.
Yes.
You don't have like the NFL or Major League Baseball, something like that. You want to be a promoter. Okay, that's like being an owner of a franchise. Okay, Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, you got to get the approval of the other 31 owners.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
It's not like that in boxing. So now
the entry
you have
level
this
in
structure.
boxing. Yeah, the entry level for boxing. Go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's the best of free enterprise that anybody can do it, but it's also the worst in free enterprise in that anybody can do it. Now you have all these people who don't know shit, and they jump in. They think they know how to navigate the boxing business. And, and just starting out. I mean, believe me, I've seen a lot of stupidity. I've seen a lot of people lose money in boxing because they think they know a better way. I mean, I've had people, I've gotten into arguments with promoters in the past over different things, even Don King, even Mark Cuban, when I did some MMA fights for him. I did 6 MMA events for him. And I tried to explain to him, well, they have an idea or something like that. I said, I've tried that a couple of times in the years past. It bombed. It just bombed. It didn't work. Like they wanted me to sell tickets. Don King wanted me to sell tickets at an open workout. Selling tickets over there. Well, the image of that, selling tickets, is embarrassing as hell for one thing. But the other thing, I already tried it. I've tried it at several boxing events. It never works, And so he had me doing anything. We sold 2 tickets, and he gets pissed off at me because he thought we didn't do a good job of selling tickets. We should have sold more tickets.
It was a bad idea.
It was just a bad idea, not because of anything other than I already knew. Okay, and I tried to explain to him. I've been through that with promoters all everywhere.
We have an interesting question here. There's an interesting question from Sid Bogle here, who asks, "What do you think of this new Saudi phenomenon in boxing with Turkey Al Sheikh and the exorbitant sums of money he's throwing at fighters and promoters now to get those fights over there and put all these fights together that other people couldn't make previously?"
Well, it's going to blow up at some point because even rich people get tired of losing money. I mean, how can they make money? Are they realistically making money, or is the guy pulling money out of his pocket, eating losses every time? I don't know, but I know this.
I would think losses, Lester, because you look at the fights they're putting together, the astronomical purses they're paying, and all the legends they're flying into town to make the event, put some stardust on it. How can they be making a profit?
Well, they're playing the long game, right? That's really what they're doing.
Presumably so. Yes.
Well, there is no long game when you do stupid stuff. I've seen people come and go in boxing, and they throw a lot of money at it. And eventually, those people get their ass kicked and they're out.
And that's exactly what I think.
There was a guy named Ross Fields one time.
Yes.
Harold Smith.
Harold
Smith, but his real name was Ross Fields.
Yes.
Yeah, he stole a bunch of money, like $11 million or $20 million, something like that, from one
Wells
Fargo Bank, and he comes in. He's going to change boxing. He started throwing a lot of money at it, and a lot of fighters in the short term made money from it, and he was paying these huge purses and stuff. But the guy didn't last because he ran out of money. Okay, he got ran out of money, and but you got guys who smart people out there like Bob Arum and some of us. I have a lot of respect for Bob, by the way. I don't know if you guys know.
Did you see Bob Arum last night, Lester? Did you see him on berating the British judges in the Taylor Catterall fight?
I didn't see it. But here's the other side of this. Here's the other side of this Saudi Arabia thing too, is that it takes away from the fights that belong in the States. They belong in England, where the fans. I have great regard for the fans who support fighters coming up and stuff. And then all of a sudden, they do all these great things in Texas or Arizona or in England or something. And now all of a sudden they fight a significant fight. You never get to see them fight anything other than a B opponent. All of a sudden your guy's an A side and you'll get to see him. You're going to see him against the BS fighter. Now everything's got to go to Saudi Arabia because you got an idiot over there overpaying everybody. I get it. You go for the money, and I don't blame anybody for not taking the money. In fact, I would like for him to bring my fighter over and overpay him by about $3-4 million. And so, so I would definitely go for it. But I'm just telling you.
There is a show in LA, right, in August with Crawford fighting Israel Madrimov. That's a Saudi promotion in LA, right? In
Yeah.
August.
It's just
Is that going to be Saudi
It's Los Angeles. I'm not sure the venue, but it's Los Angeles.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I think it's unsustainable, obviously, that rate, but I think that's what they're doing to get in, just to make their mark. And then, as you're saying right now, Ben, then they're going to be able to, like, globally, they have tentacles to reach globally. They have that kind of money. I think boxing is one of the hardest sports you can make money in, no matter what. Boxing, I feel like boxing is and will always be the 1984 gold, the 1884 gold rush. You know what I mean?
Huh.
Anyone can stake their claim, and if you're good or you're lucky, you can make a fortune. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's either you're good or lucky, and it's not ever easy. It's never a straight line trajectory.
But it's wide open. Anybody can do it. Like you said, it's the ultimate free enterprise thing, and so you get all these people that come in, and if they just come from nowhere,
it really is America. It really is America, like how America was founded. Boxing is the reflection of exactly
the Wild West. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. And that's cool. That's really cool. I admire that. But at the same time, a lot of the fighters get the short end of the stick because, one, they're putting their physical selves on the line. And I understand that's all that's asked of them, but they're putting their physical self on the line, and obviously their mental faculties as well. And the majority of them just end up, you know what I mean, on the roadside, like just wasted in shells of their former self. And I was going to ask you, how is like Bubba Buscemi doing today, and Frankie Warren actually? And I know they never got to the point where they earned that kind of money, like Sugar Ray Leonard money or Hagler money. So of course, they're going to have jobs to fall back on when they're retired, right?
Yeah. Let me tell you, one of the toughest things for me in this business is having to see fighters, later on in life, and many of them, they never get honored. They just fought their careers. They left it all in the ring. They went out there as warriors for the fans, and now they're paying a big physical price. Fortunately for you, Michael, you're the kind of fighter who didn't get hit a lot, and you were a very clever boxer as well. And so, but some guys, they suffer. They suffer a lot. Now, back up to your question. I'm sorry. Bubba Buscemi is in Belize. He's living in Belize.
Wow.
Probably smoking pot every day or something.
He's doing what he wants to do. That's great.
He's just kind of a hippie kind of guy,
Yeah.
That's kind of where it went with him. He's kind of checked out of the United States. But I'm telling you, he was a great guy. He was a hell of a. The guy had hand speed like you couldn't imagine. I mean,
I remember him. I absolutely remember him. He
had to take those 4 years off. He would easily won a world championship and probably fought a lot of meaningful fights. But
he was so talented.
Frankie won.
The last time I tried to get in touch with Donald Curry, he was in a rehab in talking about where are they now, how are fighters doing.
I'll tell you where Donald Curry's at. I'll tell you exactly where.
Go ahead.
Because I talked to him. I started the Texas Boxing Hall of Fame, and one of the reasons I started it is because so many of these great fighters from Texas, 26 world champions from here, but there's only 6 fighters from Texas in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. So I wanted to start the Texas Boxing Hall of Fame to honor guys like, Donald Curry is in the regular International Boxing Hall of Fame, but all these other fighters that had these great careers and such, I wanted to find a way to honor them, and it means so much to them when we bring them into the ring and introduce them and some Hall of Famers. So it means so much. I've seen grown men cry in the ring when we bring the Hall of Fame fighter, the Texas Boxing Hall. It means a lot to them.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry. What was your question?
We're talking about Donald Curry and where he is today.
Donald Curry is living in a mission in Fort Worth. It's a home for homeless and indigent people, and they literally got Donald Curry off the street, and
Yeah.
he lives there now. They take care of him. He's like family to him, and they get him all the different functions of boxing events and such. And Donald's done a big turnaround, and he was really dealing with severe mental illness, and he was homeless for a while. And that was one of the biggest heartbreaks of my time in boxing, to see a guy fall like that. And one of the things that would be my goal eventually, I want to get this book out of the way, but one of the things I want to do with the Texas Boxing Hall of Fame is I want to create a place for indigent fighters to live and to be taken care of. And because it's so many of them they have no place to go. They have no money.
I think another one that kind of straddled that line, the same as Donald Curry, was Big John Tate, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Donald may have been the most talented fighter I ever saw. I mean, he had the most amazing. He never got the credit he was supposed to get. He should have won the Olympic. He would have won the Olympic gold medal.
Yeah, the boycott.
So he didn't have that platform that the other guys had, and so he had to start his career. But Donald had a very difficult upbringing. I don't think his father was around, and it was just a tough life. But he was the most skilled fighter that I have ever seen. And I mean, his reflexes were so quick. He could hit you with a 4 or 5 punch combination about this far. You could be about. I'm trying to get my hands in here. And he could hit you with a 3-4 punch combination. You never hit him. You could throw 3-4.
He was like a surgeon.
Oh, he was a surgeon. But but real pleasant guy. I enjoyed working on his fights and stuff, and I'm real protective of Donald now, and want to continue to honor his legacy. And with the Texas Boxing Hall of Fame, anytime we have a function, we want to invite him and make him part of it. And there's big fights in town, and I like to make sure that Donald has tickets to it. I'll call the promoter and say, "Hey, look, can you get Donald Curry over there, put him at ringside?" And stuff like that. And
so how is he physically? Like topically he may have changed, but how is he inside, like mentally as well? Is he cognizant of everything?
No, he's not. I wouldn't say he's 100%. He's struggling a little bit there, and he's not always aware of everybody that people who he knows well. He remembers everything, but he's got some cognitive problems going on, but
he never really talked a lot.
No, he was always relatively quiet.
Yeah.
Anyway, he wasn't flamboyant anyway. It wasn't ever a show, try to show out or He was a skilled technical fighter that just, if you saw him, for those who never saw him in person, that's sad, because I mean, I've seen everybody in person, and even Sugar Ray Leonard, who was my favorite fighter, simply because his greatness against great fighters. And, he had unbelievable skills, and that business of saying that, he was all marketing and he was all show, and no. Sugar Ray Leonard was
no one.
He was a rough son bitch, okay?
But when Donald Curry beat Colin Jones and he sliced Jones to pieces in a frightening manner, because Jones was a good world-class welterweight who had taken Milton McCrory all the way twice. And when Donald just walked through him, afterwards they tried to compare him, the British television interviewer tried to compare him to Sugar Ray Leonard, and Donald said, "Ray was a great fighter, but I feel I'm a better fighter than Ray." And there was no hint of a boast or any bombast. It was just that he believed that at that time, that he was even better than Ray Leonard, which history will probably suggest that he wasn't, but it didn't seem absurd back then.
No, he was headed that way. He was headed that way, and he also they also were talking about him and Marvin Hagler, and I was like, wow. And he hadn't even jumped up from welterweight yet, I don't believe.
Yeah. The one thing
Gil Clancy thought he could beat Hagler.
Yeah, the one problem Donald may have had trouble with was you weren't gonna be able to out slicking, but if a guy really got on his chest and stuff, I always wondered what happened if the guy started pushing him back. Hagler would have been one guy that could have potentially pushed him back, but he was a guy who was real poorly managed down the stretch, and
Yes.
and they had chances to do things they didn't do, and they took opportunities that they shouldn't have done when he wasn't quite ready for it.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. I thought because I was close to the situation, I knew Donald well, and I knew all the people around him. Because he's from Fort Worth and I'm from Fort Worth, and I was involved in several of his fights early in his career. So, I was able to follow him along the way, and I just think that he was managed by a guy named David Gorman in Fort Worth, and David had several champions, but he had a lot of talent to work with. I'm telling you.
What did you think of the Hunnigan defeat at the time? Do you think he was just dead at the weight, or what?
Oh, I thought it was an easy fight. I thought he was going to blow Hunnigan out. But he wasn't right mentally for that fight. He was going through a lot of problems with his manager at the time, and you had
Muhammad Akbar.
Yeah, well, no, his manager was David Gorman.
With Dave.
Where Curry's problem started is when he left David Gorman, and then Akbar started stepping in and I don't know if you call it interfering because he may have every legal right, But I thought that his career took a turn for the bad there, and
it really did. I was at that fight, Caesars in Atlantic City, and I remember bumping into. I like to say this a lot. I always say it. I bumped into he was just about to go into the ring, and our eyes locked, and we kind of, you know what I mean. I could see that this was not the Donald Curry I was used to.
He wasn't right for that fight. He should have, in his prime, if he were right that day, he would have beat him without any.
I believe.
I think it would have been I wouldn't say an easy fight, but he would have picked him apart just like he did everybody else. I mean, he was basically, if he was right that day, he was unbeatable.
Yeah, at that time he really was. I always wondered what it would look like if Marge Breland and Donald Curry fought. What do you think about that?
Curry, I know Breland well, and I'm personal friends with him because I worked on so many of his fights when he was an '84 Olympian. Yes. All those fights on ABC, I worked on all of them. I was a guy who ran the live gate events. And so but I have a lot of respect for Mark as a fighter, but it'd be hard for me to say that he was better than Donald. Well, he wasn't. And he probably would tell you that too. He was a great fighter, Martin Breland. I love Martin Breland. He's a great guy too. And I really enjoy working with him. There's
only one way to make it in boxing, and there's almost like a trillion ways to not make it. I mean, you look at guys like Ika Beabuchi, Donald Curry, these crazy talents that if you're training them or you're managing them, you feel like you have the surest thing since I don't even know what. You know what I mean? Like you just have a sure thing. This guy has the talent. He's focused. He's winning. He's beating all these guys. And just one little thing can go, minutely off course.
House of cards comes down.
And L's apart at the far end of it by the time you're finished.
Silk, we've been on for like an hour and 8 minutes now. I'm just checking that our guest is still cool and we could start.
Oh yeah.
Finding I really feel I could talk to Lester all day. Trust me, all night, because there's so much we haven't tapped. There is so much. He's got a great story. We haven't talked about Sylvester Stallone. We haven't talked about De La Hoya Charpentier. We haven't talked about Chavez Whitaker. I just don't. So I'm just wondering, are you still good, Lester, for a little for 10 minutes?
Yeah, I'm good for a little bit. I've got a niece I've got to go drop off
Okay, I'm just keeping an eye on the clock for you, sir.
A graduation card with a little bit of money. She'll appreciate that when I get there. I'm okay for a little longer.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about the De La Hoya Charpentier thing, not because it was a memorable fight as such, but it was a big event in your career, and it was something that you saw the phenomenon of Oscar De La Hoya up close. I believe it made a big impression on you. The star power he had.
Oh yes, man. Of course, I saw it before I was ever involved in any of the fights that I worked on for him. But because I known Aaron for a lot of years and worked with him on many different occasions. It was important. I called Bob and told him it was important to get Oscar into San Antonio. I said, you got to get him to San Antonio. We got the new Alamo Dome here, and and this is ideal, and blah, blah, blah. And I knew Oscar had something really special. And so we brought him to San Antonio. He did really well, and we had all kinds of celebrities there. And it was like Elvis Presley had come to town, you know. I mean, Oscar was a special talent, but he was a special personality as well. And he had that connection with the girls, you know, and not many fighters did. Michael had his little connection. I know. Okay. And, but my vision, when I worked on the 1993 Chavez Whitaker fight for Don King, I managed to market a live gate event for that one. My vision was I wanted to see more stadium events in the United States, because there had not been a stadium event before Chavez Whitaker since 1978 when Ali fought Spinks at the Superdome in New Zealand. And so that was such an epic experience. My ultimate goal when I saw Oscar fight, I want to see him fight in the stadium. Okay, it was a little too early to drop Oscar into the stadium in San Antonio. We put him in the basketball configuration, about 17,000 seat capacity at the at the Alamo Dome. And then I started in on bug. Now, keep in mind, I'm writing this chapter now. That I have a literary coach that's helping me with organizing the book and such. He said, do yourself a favor, write your favorite chapter first. And the one that I felt I needed to write was my biggest, I don't know about legacy, because I don't want. I have no legacy really. I have.
That's not true.
Experiences. My most interesting experience, I think, is going to be these three. There's 3 chapters, and one of the chapters is I don't think it's the chapter summary I sent you. It's not there, but there's the setting the stage for Oscar night. It was about the lead up to him fighting in San Antonio, fighting in El Paso. I'm sorry, not El Paso, but there haven't been 2 HBO fights in El Paso, and then me trying to get Aaron to bring him to El Paso, and because he'd already been in San Antonio, and Aaron had done a fight in '97 with Oscar. I'm sorry, not with Oscar, but Eric Morales and Daniel Zaragoza fought in El Paso in September '97. And so at the press conference, I told Aaron, I said, I turned to Bob and I said, Bob, now if we could just get you to bring Oscar De La Hoya to El Paso, I think you'll make the El Paso fight fans happy. I said that in front of the media and the press conference. And Bob was like, when he finally comes up to the microphone, as I introduced him, he comes to the microphone, he goes, Lester, he goes, we would love to do that, but, Oscar's already booked and it's not going to happen. I don't see the opportunity for Oscar to fight in El Paso. So after the press conference, he lectured me. I wouldn't say it's a coming to Jesus talk because he's Jewish, but he pulled me to the side and he started saying, "That's bullshit, Lester. You can't get these people's hopes up like that. Oscar's never going to fight in El Paso. It's not going to happen. He's fighting in Atlantic City for Donald Trump in February. In January, and then he's going to fight in Vegas after that. He'll never come back to El Paso. It's not going to happen. And you're getting all these people all pumped up and everything, make me look like an ass by not committing Oscar to come to El Paso. Well, I kept bugging him, and finally I found an opening, and the Sharp DA fight he was scheduled to fight at Trump Plaza. Trump had put up $900,000 for the fight, and it got postponed. And then it got postponed, and the second time it got postponed from February to March, and then Oscar had hurt his hand and it wasn't well, and they said, well, we're gonna have to postpone it indefinitely. And then when I read that, I called Aaron. I said, and he took my call. I was like, he knows what I'm calling for. And I said, and I came up with the idea of taking it to El Paso to the Sun Bowl. And he said, "You're out of your goddamn mind." I said, "Bob, no, think about it." I said, "Okay, you got a guy you can't sell, Charpentier. I said, you gotta come up with something to create some hype around this fight and what you're going to do with the guy next." I said, "You put him in the Sun Bowl and you have a football stadium full of people. everybody's going to get excited about it. HBO's going to love that. I said, well, that kind of perked his ears up, right? Okay. So anyway, so eventually he gave me 48 hours to come up with $1.3 million guaranteed. He said, look, Trump's paying $900,000 for the fight. You give me $1.3 million so I can make a little extra money. I can pay off Trump. So now I'm going to say that I paid Trump hush money.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing over here.
To get Trump out, I had to get Aaron extra $200,000 to get Trump an extra $200,000. And so Bob was on board, and I mean, I'm just now right. I was writing that chapter this morning, and but anyway, long story short, we ended up doing 49,000 people, and we would have done more. The stadium held 55,000, but we had about 5,000 or 6,000 seats that were so far away that they couldn't even sell them. But anyway, it was an amazing thing. And Oscar De La Hoya fighting in a football stadium. And I remember Aaron told me, he said, Lester, he says, how the hell are you going to put 40,000, 50,000 people in that stadium? And he said he just did 14,000 in San Antonio. I said, well, it's perception. I said, you got to know the people. I said, I know these people are a little crazy. They're not going to believe it. And they didn't. You tell people that, what do you think? I would ask around 8 or 10 people, what do you think about Oscar De La Hoya fighting the Sun Bowl? And everyone, oh, well, that's a pipe dream. You know, that's not going to happen. And then you had something special, right? So that my idea to get into a football stadium, that was to help, I wanted more fights out of Vegas in places like El Paso, Texas, in the football stadium, or in Phoenix, Arizona, or Chicago, places like that. And not that I was anti Las Vegas, because I love Las Vegas. It's great for boxing, but it's take it to the damn or buying the pay-per-view every fight and all that. But El Paso had this uniqueness about it that the national average for Oscar De La Hoya fight for pay-per-view at the time was some close circuit too, was 5%. 5% of the people who had cable would buy Oscar De La Hoya fights. El Paso, Texas was 17.5%.
So Lester, sorry. So Sid Buggle, he wrote in and he wanted to ask you a question. He asked, and it's a very interesting question. I think that you're perfectly, if you could answer this one. Okay. Do you think there'll ever be a heavyweight champ in the United States again?
You know what? You might think this is kind of far-fetched, but I actually think that I manage right now the next great American heavyweight. His name's Tristan Kalkreuth, Tristan. He's on Instagram, Kalkreuth, Kalkreuth. He's a cruiserweight right now. He's the one I told you his shoulder came out of the socket. He got a loss, so he's 13-1. But he's getting ready. But when I signed him, he was 6'3", 180 pounds. He's now 6'5.5", 200 pounds. So he's got the frame to be able to carry 220, 240 pounds eventually. And I think down the road that I don't see anybody with more talent than he's got in the heavyweight division. Now,
and how long has he been in boxing? Has he been boxing for a while?
He turned pro when he was 17. He was a U.S. amateur youth champion and fought in the youth world games. And I signed him when he was 17 years old. But he's had 2 injuries that kind of set him back. He would have already fought for the world championship by now. Maybe not the heavyweight, but something with cruiserweight title. Yeah. But if you want to see some spectacular knockouts, go look at his highlight tape on his Instagram.
We heard it here first.
Yeah. Can you tell us again? Can you give me the spelling of the name again? You said Justin?
Tristan
Kalkreuth. Tristan.
Tristan and Kalkreuth. Kalkreuth. Tristan Kalkreuth. He goes by nickname of Sweet Tea. You know why he goes by Sweet Tea?
No.
3 days before Pernell Whitaker died, Ronnie Shields put Ronnie was training. Ronnie put him on the phone with Pernell Whitaker, Sweet Pea, and when Pernell Whitaker died 3 days later, he was shook up about it. He was so excited he got to talk to Cornell Whitaker, and I kind of mentioned it in passing to him. You know, I said, well, you know, you can always go buy a sweet tea. He goes, I like that. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
And,
that's nice. It works with Tristan.
Yeah. And so now he took the nickname of Sweet Tea instead of Sweet Pea, and that's an honor. That's actually an honor.
I got him there.
That's him. That's him. He's a real fighter. I'm telling you. He's
We'll look for him. We'll look out for him.
Hey, Jake Paul does not want any piece of that. I can tell you right now.
He doesn't. Yeah, no.
I don't think he wants. Wait, I have a question. What do you think's going to happen on the Mike Tyson fight, Michael?
I personally think that Mike could go in there, go into the ring, and just play with him for 10 rounds and beat him. Not a problem. Like, he didn't have to go in there trying to knock him out. He can go in there just on his knowledge and jab him and move him, blah, 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 touch him up and all that kind of stuff. Mike can absolutely do that even at 60 years of age. Absolutely. And he can also go in there and knock him out. But I think, you know, if I don't know how much Mike is really taking it serious. It's, you know, you really have to. I just can't, in any altered universe, I can't see this guy doing anything with him. He couldn't do anything with the other kid, Fury's brother or whatever, right?
Right. But you know, Mike, even when Mike fought that exhibition with Roy Jones, you knew he could have knocked Roy Jones out any minute in that fight he wanted to. But they're going to have a brother-in-law deal, and Mike's going to pull back on him and not try and embarrass him. If Mike really wants to, I think he can knock him out. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, that's where I'm going with it. He can if he wants. I don't think the kid's power translates to real fighters. No. I think I can get a novice amateur heavyweight that would beat him. Like right here in New York, I could find a gym fighter that could go out there and knock him out. I could find what's his name? Davis. You could put Davis at 135 pounds.
Of course you could.
And he would knock him out. I mean,
that's not even a revelation. Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't believe that. You know, I don't know. It's crazy. But hey, listen, I think it's money. It's important to Mike. You know what I mean? Like 30 million. I don't know anyone in the world that couldn't do an extra 30 million or 40 million.
Oh man! I think it's a brilliant idea. You know, so
they'll milk it.
You know what? I would pay. I tell people, they ask me about that fight because I'm in the business, right? So I have all kinds of people ask me, "What do you think?" I mean, I've had 100 people. It feels like that have asked me. And I say, you know what? I would pay to watch the walking of the fighters, okay? Because we don't know if it's going to be an actual real fight. Because you know, Mike may or may not be nice to him if he wants to. But you know, I kind of remember I told you I played everything with baseball. Okay, I played on a 50 and over baseball team that played in national championships in Phoenix about 4 or 5 years ago. Well. A guy who used to throw those 95, 96 mile an hour fastballs I was talking about earlier. Okay, I played on a team with him and 4 other Major League Baseball players, Roger Clemens. Okay, so I'm a catcher. So I caught Roger Clemens during that tournament twice. But Roger Clemens can still throw 88 miles an hour. And this guy cannot handle an 88 mile an hour fastball, even though Mike may not have his 95, 98 mile an hour fastball, but I promise you, he's got 87, 88. Just watching him hit the bags and watching what he did in the Roy Jones thing, you know.
And it's not like Jake ever hit that kind of fastball either. So that's
no
point in his life was he hitting that. So for him to expect to hit it now, even though it doesn't go that fast, I don't know. I don't understand, but it's probably bigger than what I know. I don't know.
Yeah, no, but I'm rooting for all of them to make money. I wish I was the promoter. I can tell you that because I'll be making a lot of money. I would be happy for that.
Boxing's been doing exceptionally well, right, Sugar? Right, Lester? Considering all the things they've talked about lately, and I mean, I don't know. They say boxing.
We're in a purple patch. You know, we've seen, like say, Fury Usyk didn't disappoint, did it? It was an absorbing affair. It was an exciting, interesting fight.
Yeah.
We are seeing that 5 versus 5 next weekend. You know, with 5 of Frank Warren's versus 5 of Eddie's, and you've got Wilder versus Zhang topping that bill. These are, I know, I take on board what Lester said earlier, but these are exciting times, right now.
Oh, I think so. I think it's very good. A lot of people keep trying to tell me that boxing's dead. I've been hearing that my whole life. Okay, Michael, I've been in boxing 42 years since I was 25 years old. I'm 68. Wow. I'm 68. I've heard all that. I've heard all the crap about boxing dying since the first day I started. And all this doing now is still putting up good numbers. Fighters are making more money than they ever made in their life.
Yes.
Time. And and hopefully some of these the money keeps getting better and better. I'm managing fighters right now because that's an easier route for me to stay in boxing than it is to try to manage and market the live gate events, because now everybody, I used to do I did a ton of fights, probably 70, 80 events for Top Rank over the years. And Lee Samuel's a Hall of Fame PR guy for Top Rank.
Yeah.
The last fight that I worked on, that Lee worked on as well, was in Oklahoma City. Was a world championship fight. Alex, I don't know Alex's last name. He was fighting Maurice Hooker. Anyway, Lee said to me, he said, Lester, see all those people sitting on that row right there? It was behind the media section, right? He said, it's like, he says, 10 or 12 of them right there. See them? I said, yeah. He goes, I remember you used to do all of them's job. He said, now, now it takes 10 or 12 people to do the same damn job.
To cover that base.
They don't need my services in many cases, because now the promoters have full staffs. Before they had marketing staff, they might have one PR guy, then they have a couple matchmakers, and people do the travel and food, the hotel and all that. But after that, they had nothing. But now they've got marketing, they've got social media people, and so the direction for me in boxing now, as I go to the end, I think the management side is better suited for me, because the fighters are making more money than they've ever made.
Yes.
If they're going to make more money, and I can make more money as a manager than I can trying to go from event to event, and depending on these promoters, because no promoter, all the work I did for them, I got paid well along the way, and I should have saved more. But either you do or you don't, and I didn't. Okay, so I got to keep working. But I'm okay with that, because I love my work. I love boxing.
Yeah, when you love what you do, it makes all the difference in the world. And that's what a lot of fighters do, right? The only reason you do it is because you love it. There can't be any other explanation.
Absolutely. Well, Lester, it's been fascinating and a pleasure to get this insight, because I spoke to you, like I say, it's getting on for 18 months ago now, when I was in San Antonio, and we spoke, because Michaela put me on the phone to you, and I've always been interested in your career and legacy ever since, or even before that, to be honest with you. So I feel, because you've had such a vast career in boxing, we hardly touched the sides on this occasion, but I'm enormously grateful for your time today, and I'm sure I speak for the Silk as well.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Thank you so much for taking time.
Okay, well, a little bit of a different perspective. I've probably had my hands in more boxing pies than most people, I would say, over the years, but I've had a lot.
This has been one of the most interesting shows for me, and also I kind of wish we were just in a bar or in a car on a long journey or something, and we could just keep going. But because we're in the entertainment business.
Yeah, I wanted to speak with you that day, and I really had a lot of things I wanted to share about Tony Ayala, but knowing that my heart was in doing this book,
I understood it.
It was like I have very few assets to sell. Not that I'm going to make any money on the book.
I got it. Maybe we should talk about that documentary sometime. I don't know. Maybe we can still do something. Who knows?
Yeah, be awesome. Because you know things that I don't know. You had long conversations.
And vice versa. For sure.
Down the road. But again, let me encourage everybody to buy Sugar's book, because I know the story. It's a fascinating story. One of the most bizarre stories in the history of boxing. And, and I'm telling you, Tony Ayala came that close to fighting for the world championship after 16 years in prison.
Twice.
One hand injury away. if he doesn't injure his hand against your boy,
Campos.
he wins that fight. Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating ride for me. And but yeah, they'll be able to read it.
I'll send you a copy. But
Okay.
Texas boxing legend Lester Bedford, thank you once again, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate your support. Remember to like, subscribe, promote, tell your friends, spread the word. We'll be back next week. You know the drill by now. Sorry that Gary wasn't here, but we hope you weren't too, grieved by his absence. Be lucky.
All right, thanks, guys.